Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. You have joined the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences webinar on clinical rotations. This webinar is part of a series of webinars where we are placing ourselves as a resource for prospective students who are seeking to understand healthcare education and trying to find out what the right questions are to ask as you seek the right program for you. My name is Ita Duran, and I am Executive Director of Global Strategy at the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, or MCPHS for short. This university is located in Boston and Worcester, Massachusetts, and in Manchester, New Hampshire, as well as with a significant online presence. Established 200 years ago, the university engages and trains leaders in the healthcare industry in various professions of healthcare practice, research, disease prevention, healthcare business, technology and administration, as well as the life and biomedical sciences. This university is the premier locus of expertise in the education of health professionals. Rooting ourselves in this expertise, we are going to try to address the questions of clinical rotations. What are they, and how can you specialize in the field that you want? In order to dig into this topic, we are joined by three panelists, and I would like to introduce our first two panelists, Dr. Paul DiFrancesco, who has worked in the industry for close to 20 years as Director of Pharmacy in various companies, namely Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Harvard Community Health, and Harvard Vanguard Medical Associates, before joining MCPHS, when he joined as Director of Experiential Education and eventually Dean of the School of Pharmacy in Boston. Today, he leads the university's pharmacy experiential education strategy. He is an experienced academic administrator skilled in healthcare management, healthcare practice, patient safety, health policy, and has great experience and a sustained passion for student development. After his pharmacy studies, Dr. DiFrancesco completed a master's in public administration and went on to complete a doctorate in education. We are very lucky to have you here today. Thank you for being here, Dr. DiFrancesco. Dr. Greg Waldorf is Associate Dean for Clinical Programs in the MCPHS School of Optometry. After completing his Doctor of Optometry, Dr. Waldorf completed a pediatrics and binocular vision residency. Dr. Waldorf was in private practice for 18 years before becoming a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry. Dr. Waldorf also has a Master of Public Health. He has been with MCPHS since 2015. Dr. Waldorf's clinical specialties are pediatrics, pediatric low vision, and examining special populations. Welcome, Dr. Waldorf. We are looking to have a conversation today, so I'll be asking you some questions that we have found prospective students are often have front of mind. But please feel free to jump in anytime. Jasmine, our student, I'll introduce you in a little bit, but if something that we talk about makes you think of something you want to share, please do so. So let's start with Dr. DiFrancesco. Could you begin by explaining what exactly are clinical rotations and what is meant by the word rotations?
Thank you. So clinical rotations are an important part of any curriculum where the focus is healthcare. It includes optometry, medicine, pharmacy, nursing, et cetera, because in these fields, we are committed to taking care of patients, both on a one-to-one basis and overall population health. And with the type of responsibility that we have, that is the health and safety of our patients, we have to be well-trained and well-educated. And so it's the classroom learning, the knowledge that you learn in the classroom is really important, as well as the skills you develop in the laboratory. And those two go hand in hand to prepare you for a clinical rotation. And a clinical rotation is simply this. A rotation is an opportunity for you to spend multiple hours a week over the course of many weeks in a specific medical environment, a clinical environment. Clinical and medical, we can use interchangeably for this discussion. And so you're there on rotation the whole day. And you're there every day, and you work very closely with clinical instructors. Your clinical instructors are just like your classroom instructors, except now instead of the four walls of the classroom and the computer screen, you're learning with the patients right there, with the other medical professionals and medical students right there. We're learning together and learning to take care of your patients. And by the way, if you think about it, as you pursue your career and after you graduate and get your degree, you'll become professional in a work environment, and hopefully you'll have a long and satisfying career. But most of your learning will be done in the workplace. Yes, occasionally you'll go back to the classroom, maybe get an additional degree, or learn relearn some topics, some new topics. But most of your learning is in the work environment. And so that's why the clinical rotation is so important, because it allows you to apply what you learned in the classroom, and it allows you to apply what you learned in the lab in terms of skills. And secondly, it's the way for you to develop as a professional, the way for you to find the path of lifelong learning, where, as you know, in this day and age, the speed and change in medicine, technology, and knowledge is so rapid that we have to put extra effort in to develop those new knowledge and new skills. And we'll always do it in the workplace. So in essence, we will be preparing you to be self-directed learners for the rest of your career, so you can be the best that you can be.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I did want to invite students who are listening to us to please type in any questions that you have in the Q&A section of your screen. Lauren, who is our senior assistant director of admission, international admission, will be answering those questions on the Q&A platform. So please don't hesitate to share your questions, and anything that Lauren can't answer will be shared with the panelists. So back to you, Dr. DeFrancesco. Could you please break down the various parts of a program? Where do the rotations fit in a clinical program? And if you could explain some terminology that we often hear, such as introductory experiences, IPPE, or advanced experience, APPEs. This I know is more particular to pharmacy, but if you could just give us an overview of rotations in a clinical program in general for any major.
Certainly. So typically, as I had mentioned previously, students move along by the way, rotations are courses. You're graded in them, and they count as credit. You get full academic credit for your rotations. It's part of the curriculum. And so the curriculum is designed for you to learn first on an introductory level, where you take your introductory and early courses, and then you participate in your introductory or your early labs. And then from there, you'll participate and experience early rotations. That gives you sort of a baseline of knowledge, skills, and experience. So then you come back to campus after that first set of introductory experiences. We call them introductory pharmacy practice experiences, or IPPE for short. That's specific to pharmacy, but all programs have early experiences. You come back and now you engage in advanced coursework, advanced clinical coursework, advanced lab work. And lab is like rotation, except you're simulating the activity. And in rotation, it's real life patients in a real life clinical setting. So you go through that cycle of advanced coursework, followed by advanced laboratory work, and then your advanced rotations. In pharmacy, the last year of a Doctor of Pharmacy degree program, you're on rotation for the whole year. The experience is so important and so valuable that we commit 1 year of the curriculum, your final year, to being on rotation. So you're on rotation for the whole year. You go from one rotation to another. There are the rotations and their advanced pharmacy practice experiences, or APPE. And you have required rotations, but you also have elective rotations in this case, which are really important, since elective rotations allow you to either focus in a particular area of interest or maybe explore other areas that you're not familiar with, so that you have a well-rounded clinical experience, which can add to your education, but also help you think about career decisions, so that you have as many experiences as possible. The other important thing about the clinical rotation is you get to meet people, you get to network, you get to learn about different organizations, different hospitals, different health centers, different community pharmacies, or whatever the discipline is. And you get to show people what you can do, because as a student, you're looking at different places as potential places of employment. And I can tell you from experience that these organizations that host you as students on rotation, they're thinking about their own needs in terms of hiring people in the future. So they want to, bring as many students as they can, so they'll have opportunities to hire. So that's the other reason why rotations are so important, not just to get the experience, but for you to develop a network of people that you can use as references, that you can use for recommendations, and possibly who can lead you to job opportunities. And so for all those reasons, the clinical rotation is just so very important.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Dr. Waldorf, could you maybe share some thoughts on the same topic?
Yeah, so I come from the optometry program, which is a little bit different than the pharmacy program. And what we do, we begin after 3 semesters of didactic classroom work. We have the students actually start a clinical rotation at our in-house clinic called the Eye and Vision Center. And what we do is we, because you're providing direct care to the patient, you work with preceptors who, are there to support you, make sure that, you're doing everything properly. They'll check your work. And then we expand that to where, at the next semester, you might be working in a community health center with clinical preceptors who are collaborating with you and providing supports as you're doing the exams. And then our 3rd year, our clinical rotations change to specialty clinics. And then finally, as much as with pharmacy, the final year, you're doing externship rotations throughout the country, at community health centers, at private practices, at hospitals. And so, we start a little bit more in-house with the clinic, and then you just kind of expand outward. And then finally, after you graduate, one of another clinical experience you can have would be a residency program, which would help you sort of specialize into some specialty interests that you might have.
Thank you. One of the questions that has come up from the students is how are these rotations, how is student performance evaluated during rotations, and what are the feedback mechanisms for continuous improvement once the students are in the rotations? To either of you.
So I can hop in there first real quick. So whenever you're at the in-house clinical rotation, there's a lot of feedback. Like after you see a patient, your clinical preceptor will give you immediate feedback. It can be verbal, but then we also have a grading system where there's written feedback and comments about your performance. And then as you go out to the externship rotations, your final year, because you have more experience and those preceptors are working with you every single day, there's more of like a midterm and final grade. So as you're learning the skills, we give you much more feedback so you can build your confidence, your strength, and your basically your skill set and how you handle patients. And then as you become more advanced, the amount of feedback does become a little bit less, but we're really there to support you at the beginning with that.
Thank you. Now we've both of you have mentioned the importance of these clinical rotations. But something that we haven't talked about is preceptors. Can you explain who they are, what is their role in student success, and what credentials they should have?
So I'll speak to pharmacy preceptors. So preceptors is a general term for a clinical instructor. And so as Dr. Waldorf alluded to, you get direct feedback from your preceptor while you're on rotation. And that's one of the differences between the classroom and the rotation, because in the classroom, you're one of many students, and you'll get feedback on your quizzes, your exams, papers, etc., presentations. But in the clinical setting, the feedback is not just immediate, but it's specific to you. So the feedback goes right to your performance so that it can help you to develop. And pharmacy is the same as optometry in that early feedback is formative, meaning you're still developing, and we want to make sure you go down the right path. And so you get feedback that allows you to make improvements without sacrificing, your grades. And as you continue to develop, your feedback eventually goes from formative to what we call summative, which is the grade does count after you've had multiple attempts, or you've had several experiences, or after you've worked with the preceptor. And in pharmacy, of course, preceptors are pharmacists, and they're obviously very skilled and experienced at what they do. And so if it's an inpatient hospital pharmacist, then their specialty is inpatient pharmacy. If it's an outpatient community-based pharmacy, that'll be their specialty. And that will be the type of rotation you'll be paired with, inpatient or outpatient, for instance. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, these rotations are also courses, and there are certain goals and objectives that we have for you to learn. And so there's a syllabus, just like there is with a course. And we provide that syllabus to the preceptor. We provide, when a preceptor comes to us as a new preceptor, we provide training and education, and we support them along the way, just like we support our students. And from time to time, we'll review things with them. So the preceptors, even though they're external, outside of it, four walls of a campus, we are in constant touch with them so that the students can have the best possible experience.
And you alluded to this earlier, Dr. DeFrancesco, about the importance of clinical rotations in networking and in finding a job. for the students afterwards. Could you expand a little bit on that? And I invite Dr. Waldorf to join also in why these clinical rotations are so important for student employability after graduation.
So obviously, rotations are mutually beneficial between the school and the student on the one side and the preceptors and the clinical side on the other. Together, we can help improve patient care through direct patient care and population care. We can support each other in terms of education and advancement of medicine, but also schools exist to not only educate students, but to help students develop a career path. Clinical rotations exist not just to educate students, but also to provide them with a career path. So the two sides of the equation work hand in hand, and it's not only, as I mentioned earlier, not only do students get to understand and appreciate one organization and what they're about, but that organization gets to know the student, learn about the qualities of that student, their abilities, their beliefs, and hopefully there's a good match there, because one of the challenges for organizations is always making sure they have the best possible employees who are well educated and who are motivated to do well.
Yeah, I think when you're doing your clinical rotations sort of in-house, like on campus, those are very standardized, where there's very specific goals and objectives that we want you to meet. But I think in terms of like when you start going to external sites, it's really it can be very eye-opening, because I know for years when I was in school, I thought, oh, I want to work with geriatric patients. That's really my thing. And it wasn't really until I started to do my clinical rotations where I'm like, boy, I'm a pediatrics guy. I mean, I really, get along with the kids. And so, I think you kind of see things, you experience things, and in some ways there's also a business component to it, where you can see how, different practices might run. Do you want to be more like a big practice, or maybe a smaller practice, or in a community health center? So I think, that really can impact your trajectory in terms of like where you really want to end up and what kind of practice you want to end up based on the clinical rotations you do in your program.
So now, what kind of an impact does the actual clinical site also have? The type of site, the prestige of the site. I know that we have a very long history in the Longwood medical area. When students are choosing a university in which they are going to get their clinical degree, they of course want to enhance their employability and competitiveness through their performance. What is the impact of the actual sites where they're going to be?
Sure. I think one of the advantages that we have is that being in New England, in general, generally speaking, and in Boston very specifically, is we have major medical centers which are known nationally, and I dare say internationally, well known. And so at these all of these medical centers are also affiliated with research centers. So you have parallel things going on at these major medical centers. In Boston, for instance, you have world-class healthcare, and you have world-class research going on at the same time. And, you know, it's the pharmacy schools, the optometry schools, the nursing schools, the medical schools working together with the hospitals and the health centers and the pharmaceutical companies and, you know, other entities, all working together, you know, for the betterment of, you know, patients everywhere. And students get, you know, students on rotation at MCPHS get to see that firsthand. They might be involved in some very unique medical care being given, or they may be involved in some research, some phase study that may be going on with a new drug that's, you know, ready to you know, go, you know, ready to be marketed. So there's lots of opportunities to see all the different sides of healthcare. There's, you know, the patient healthcare and you know, research, and as Dr. Waldorf mentioned earlier, the business and administration of that. Some students may be more interested in that side of things because you have to have very highly trained medical professionals, pharmacists, physicians, etc., who also can be the leaders and the business people and the financial people to make all these things work, because they just don't work on their own. So many opportunities to have a diverse education, and subsequent to that, so many opportunities to follow various career paths by being exposed to you know, to this you know, major medical area.
So the quality of the institutions, the diversity of the institutions, Dr. Waldorf, are critical to the student's resume and to what the impact that will have in their job seeking.
Yeah, they, you know, and certainly as you go through your clinical rotations, you know, whether they're in-house or external, you do make a lot of connections. And, you know, in my experience, those connections help you get to your next step, which helps make more connections. And it's just kind of like this never-ending process. And, you know, ultimately, if a student, when they graduate, decide to do a residency, you know, the connections that they'll make, you know, depending on the institution they choose to do their residency in, and those are lifelong connections that will be there to help support you, to, you know, answer questions, give you, you know, advice, you know, just help you along your professional pathway when you graduate. So it's definitely helpful to, you know, to be affiliated with these very strong institutions.
Well, I imagine that maintaining good relationship with these institutions in a way is dependent also on the school sending them very well-prepared students who are work ready. So the preparation of the students before they arrive into their clinical sites is important for us as an institution to be able to keep sending students, while at the same time will shape the impression that the student makes. So the preparation of the student and what the university will have the student do before it gets to clinical rotations is important. That's why I'd like to bring up a little bit what maybe what you do with students, Dr. Waldorf, with his you work with cutting edge technology to make sure that your optometry students are able to have simulations as real life as possible before they get in front of patients. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Of course. So, you know, we build on, you know, your clinical education. You know, we're very proud of our clinical program because, you know, we feel like the Worcester area where we're located, a very diverse patient population. But so as part of this, in order to get you ready for that, one of the things we do in your clinical training courses is we have virtual reality software and programs. And in this picture, it's me with a student. There's actually, it's through virtual reality, you can do these retinal evaluations inside the eye. And so when you're training students to use this instrument that's on the student's head, which is called a binocular indirect ophthalmoscope, it's used to assess the retina. And so when you're training, you can go into this virtual reality lab and practice on, a fake patient. And, it'll practice your skills, like how to hold the lens properly to get, the best view of the retina, of the structures inside the eye. And then as the students progress through, it's really clever in that the skills become much more complicated. So by the time they're a third year, if a student has a patient that might not show for their appointment, they can go into the VR lab, and there's actually cases in there where they'll give you a case presentation. You have to do your assessment of the retina and then come up with a diagnosis. So that's one way that we use this advanced technology to help in student clinical education.
And Dr. DeFrancesco, can you share some of the ways that the pre-professional phase of the Doctor of Pharmacy program prepares students so that they can be their best during the clinical experience?
Absolutely. When pharmacists dispense medication, they're also responsible for educating, advising, and ensuring the safety of the patient with those medications, because these medications are quite potent. And oftentimes we're dealing with patients who have other medical conditions and maybe are taking other medications. So it gets to be complicated. So we use state-of-the-art software to make sure that we're able to review any potential drug interactions, any toxicities, any problems that we might encounter with dosing based on a patient's medical condition. And that goes even further now. We have new software that actually can predict the efficacy, the effectiveness of medication by a person's genomic makeup. So we have software now that is able to do that, so we can target these medications. And the pharmacist has to be really technology savvy, because we have to use multiple databases to do our job. And technology that we have on campus is world class, because we also have to understand when we have to prepare certain medications, for instance, mixing a sterile compound for intravenous administration. We have to understand about compatibility when you mix certain things in a liquid medium, whether or not it's going to stay stable. What's the storage? What's the stability? Is it going to cause problems in the patient? So you've got to look at that. You've got to review the patient's medical history. You have to also reconcile a patient's history in terms of their allergies and also sensitivity to certain medications. And it's done in the inpatient setting, but it's also done in the outpatient setting on an everyday basis. And so pharmacists are trained with these new technologies. We also use technology to help with mixing of these medications, as well as some in-house manufacturing that has to be done as well. So it is both a combination of understanding the use of technology, but also the technology is only as good as the medical professional, because technology is a tool, and ultimately the medical professional has to make decisions, make choices, provide answers to those that need information. And at the end of the day, our students are trained to be able to do that, to be able to make these decisions and use technology to help them. But it's really up to the medical professional.
Now, is this software that you've mentioned, the various software that you've mentioned, is that the software that is currently used in major pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies? Because I imagine that the tools and the software that students are trained for need to be updated regularly so that they can be work ready when they begin their jobs?
Yes, so the pharmacy, we have a fully functional licensed pharmacy at each campus. And the technology that's used is the same version that's used out in practice. It's just adjusted for educational purposes. But it mimics the databases that are used out there. So students get firsthand experience, and then as they go out on rotation, they are able to adapt to the versions that are out there in different pharmacies, as well as one of the other responsibilities that pharmacists have, which we don't think about too much, except during the pandemic, it was so important. What we call the chain supply. It's important for pharmacies to have the medication ready for patients that desperately need it. They can't wait. And so pharmacists have to be able to manage their inventories. And this technology that we use is able to locate medication in multiple sources and able to obtain it, in a quick turnaround time. So that's the other important job of the pharmacist, is to maintain inventory levels of these life-saving medications.
And the U.S. healthcare industry in general and employers in these clinical sites emphasize interprofessional teams more and more. This university has been a leader in interprofessional education for quite some time and has integrated interprofessional training and curricula throughout the university. Could either of you or Jasmine, since you have experience also with this, could you explain to us why interprofessional education, or IPE, is important in the context of rotations and in the preparation of students for rotations in American clinical sites?
Well, one of the things I can say is with our rotations, you are not, as I'm a pharmacy student, so you would assume that I'd be speaking with just pharmacists, but however, that's not usually the case. You actually interact with a lot of different healthcare professionals from different backgrounds, and having the opportunity to communicate with them and see what they can all do in certain situations is very enlightening, and it just strengthens your team and really helps when it comes to providing patient care. It's actually really funny. I just noticed I'm in this slide, but this was one of the interprofessional trainings that we had. And in here, we did Narcan training. And so I am sitting there with one other pharmacy student, but around me, I have an acupuncturist, there's a nursing student, I have a physician's assistant, and a physical therapist student as well. And they all have different ways that they would come across Narcan overdose training. And they're all taught about different things to look for, and also what to do with a patient following that training. And so getting the opportunity to sit down and talk about what each other is learning to help a patient in this scenario, and also teach them about what we can do in that scenario, it really helps to just strengthen your profession and your relationships with others. And when you are in your rotation, it gives you an opportunity to actually know, hey, I can reach out to a physical therapist to talk about helping a patient walk or help them with their mobility following an overdose situation where a patient was on their leg for too long, or being able to make those connections and knowing who you can reach out to and also how you can communicate with them. It just really helps build your confidence as far as knowing not only what you can do, but what the other healthcare professionals around you can do. So for me, this was a very enlightening experience in the moment. And also I'm able to apply that now working on, like during my rotations and working with nurses and physical therapists and such.
And with regards to IPE, I mean, we've done some really, I think, really innovative, things where, like for instance, PA and optometry, optometry students have taught, PA students how to use one of our instruments, the slit lamp. And then the PA students turned around and taught our optometry students how to do like a full body neurological assessment. One of my absolute favorite IPE programs was the physical therapy students came in and watched the optometry students do their exams. And whoever's had their eyes tested before knows a lot of optometrists are, their arms are up and they're, kind of hunched over a little bit with their assessment. And they actually observed them and came back a couple weeks later and gave all of the optometry students exercises to do to kind of counter the negative effects of like what they, what they do on a day-to-day basis. So I think the way that the university has kind of integrated IPE and let all of the different schools kind of collaborate with these things, I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's great educational value, but it's a lot of fun, and you really see what these other professions do for their patients.
I think that that's phenomenal, and it's a interprofessional education in the university is something that is integrated in most majors, at least in all the clinical majors, because of the importance that the industry has found it to have in patient-centered care. So this is one of the key areas where MCPHS is leading in the sector to prepare students for their clinical rotations. And I'd say that another area that I'd like to have you all talk about is about the patient centers, because before the students actually go into clinical rotations, they do have the opportunities to interact with real live patients. We have, for example, the NISA Acupuncture Treatment Center, which is the photo that's on the slide, where student interns in their final year of training, closely supervised by a licensed acupuncturist, of course, provide acupuncture services for the public. Or in the dental hygiene clinic, similarly, high quality oral health services are provided by students under the supervision of professionals to the community in Boston and Worcester. You both mentioned physical therapists that we have, our physical therapy program. The Balance Movement and Wellness Center is open to patients, open to the public, and students work side by side these the highly qualified physical therapists. Dr. DiFrancesco, you can speak maybe a little bit more about the Center for Drug Information and Natural Products, as well as the Pharmacy Outreach Program, both of which, again, are open to the public and provide comprehensive, non-biased information on such topics as foreign product identification or adverse reactions. And it's a community service that is staffed by licensed pharmacists and, of course, students.
Thank you. So, we have faculty who help staff these centers, and of course, students also are involved. And through rotations, so that they can have this kind of experience. And I think both centers highlight a very important role for pharmacists. I mean, Center for Drug Information and Natural Products highlights the fact that pharmacists are the drug information experts. They are relied upon by the public as well as by other medical professionals to provide up-to-date, accurate, and detailed drug information. And of course, with so many people using natural products and over-the-counter remedies, it's also important for pharmacists to know about those types of products and not just prescription medications. And so the Center for Drug Information and Natural Products will answer questions from the public, and sometimes it'll be medical professionals that will call. Occasionally, the press calls as well, because there's some recall or some problem in the market, and they would like some information. but these faculty are experts in drug information, which is a required course for pharmacy students, and something that pharmacy students cover in all of their courses. But this is a chance, if you want to become an expert and specialize in this area, it's a chance to do an elective rotation and become a drug information specialist. The other side of the coin, in terms of pharmacy responsibilities, is our responsibility to the public, not just to offer safe and effective medication therapies, but to provide general service about healthcare and to advocate for patients when they can't advocate for themselves. And pharmacy outreach program does a terrific job of doing that, helping patients understand how to access medications if expense is a problem, how to sign up for government-based insurance, and also to for community members of the community who may not normally have the opportunity, but to learn about healthy habits and be able to make the most of their lives by being able to access these kinds of programs. So it's drug information, but it's also patient advocacy, making sure that we take care of people not just on a one-to-one basis when we see them in the pharmacy or the clinic, but also in the community.
Thank you. So this is a service that the university provides the community. But if I'm understanding correctly, this is also a bridge for students who they start off with the didactic portion, as you explained, and they go into simulations where they don't have real patients, but they're practicing their skills. Then they're practicing their skills with real patients in these different centers under the supervision of professionals. And then it's after this that they move into their real world clinical situations. Jasmine, I think you have some experience with one of these centers.
Yes, I completed one of my rotations at the pharmacy outreach program, and it is how you say it is. It gives us an opportunity to take what we've learned in class and apply it and actually speak with patients. The pharmacy outreach program is great because it is a call center. So patients call in and they ask you their questions, and you have the opportunity to write everything down. It gives you the opportunity to give them a call back. So you have that time where you can sit down and really dive into like the questions that they asked and make sure you have answers, discuss it with your supervisors, and then call back and provide information. It really helps to like build that patient like relationship and also help you really work on your communication skills, which is a huge thing in all healthcare professions. So it's definitely a great way to start practicing and like learning, like if a patient tells you, oh, I'm taking lisinopril with this and whatever, you can kind of make that connection to what you're learning in class, which is helpful. And it does have to do a lot with the government health insurance that's provided. So it's a great way for students to really learn about the US healthcare system, because as international students, we come from outside and we come in, it can be kind of a hard task to deal with. And even with US residents themselves, health insurance is not something that's easy to understand. And so to have an opportunity to fully understand it and be able to explain it to other patients is great. And that makes it a wonderful thing. Another thing I wanted to say is while this does help you get to like learn and meet other patients. One of the patients for a lot of these centers are us students. So I have been a patient in the Forsyth Dental Hygiene Clinic. I have sat in one of those chairs and gotten my teeth cleaned from a fellow student doing their dental hygiene program and listened to someone else guide them through it as well. You can also get the acupuncture services as well. So while you get to meet other patients as students at the school, you support each other in their professions as well. And you get to go out and get your teeth cleaned and help a student that who's maybe a friend of yours. And I'll tell you from personal experience, we'll be sitting on one of the floors studying, and there'll be dental hygiene students walking around asking, hey, like, are you able to come and do a cleaning? It's a free cleaning. I just need you to sit with me so I can learn a little. So it's a great way to help your fellow friends. And also you get to be one of the patients as well. So that too.
What a great way to learn. And Dr. Waldorf, one of the centers is Eye and Vision Center and an optical retail shop, really for the public. How many, do you have an idea of how many patients students see going through those centers? You're muted, Dr. Waldorf.
Sorry about that. I think we see about 6,000 to 7,000 patients a year in the Eye and Vision Center. And, you know, that starts with your basic eye exam. And then we have, you know, specialty clinics where patients with glaucoma or patients who've lost their vision, you know, come and get evaluated for, you know, low vision devices. We have a pediatrics clinic, and we also have a contact lens clinic. So, and then that's, you know, where we do all of our, you know, baseline clinical training before our students start rotating to external clinical rotations. And then we also have an in-house optical shop called Tin Optical, where, you know, students are assigned to that, and it kind of gives them, you know, training and education with the public in how to pick the appropriate pair of glasses, how to, you know, fit and adjust glasses and repair glasses. And then there's also more of a business aspect to that, like how do you run an optical? So those are our on-site, you know, facilities for optometry. One of the things that's a little bit of, you know, kind of with the IPE, but also with the clinical services we provide, a lot of times different schools will collaborate together. Like we're in usually in the winter time, we'll have a group over, you know, one of the breaks come from a child development center, and they'll bring like 40 kids, and half of them will go up to dental hygiene, and the other half will come down to optometry. They get exams, they get their eye exams, their teeth cleaned, and then they do a swap. And then you know, so a lot of the programs, and we've collaborated with pharmacy, we've collaborated with PT, PA, and we're going to start collaborating with the occupational therapy program as well. So a lot of the programs, you know, their clinical, you know, experiences, when possible, they try to overlap them to give you even more education.
And now all three of you have experience with international students in rotations. Jasmine, you're an international student yourself. We have many international students interested in all of these questions, but one of the things that they would like to know, and some of the questions that have come up in the Q&A, is that international students do have special needs when they enter rotations, because they come from not only a cultural and linguistic background that is different, but also may have experiences in a different type of healthcare system from the folks, the employees and the preceptors that are going to be in their clinical sites. And yet these international students must learn and will be assessed on American healthcare standards. These differences do sometimes create challenges through miscommunication or misunderstood behavior. And this can affect integration into the rotation site or even patient care if not addressed. So what these international students listening to us would like to know is whether the institutions that we work with or that any school works with, are these differences addressed in rotations in the way that a clinical site will welcome, onboard, and support international students? I'll start with Dr. DiFrancesco. You have a long history of working with international students in pharmacy. Could you give us your thoughts on the importance of choosing an institution whose faculty and preceptors have experience with international students.
Absolutely. So I do have a long history of working with international students at MCPHS, because MCPHS has been working with international students for a long time. We have a whole international office that works with the students from an administrative standpoint, but the faculty work with the students from day one to help them navigate the curriculum. And a lot of our faculty were international students themselves at one time, and a lot of our preceptors were international students at one time and became licensed pharmacists. Where it's a very international area. But getting back to the curriculum, there's things that we do. And by the way, a lot of American-born students don't have a lot of pharmacy experience either. And so, it's almost an even playing field, which is why we designed the early rotations, the introductory rotations, as a way for everyone to develop some basic skills and feel comfortable and feel safe in that environment. The preceptors and the clinical sites all know that many of our students are international students. Sometimes English, is a second language, and we will work through all of those. We have support systems in place for the students. We try to add, workplace learning as part of the experience, besides learning about pharmacy, for instance. Helping students understand what the workplace is like in this country, how to approach the workplace in terms of how to communicate and how to understand policies and procedures and all those kinds of things that help you learn more effectively and communicate more effectively. So we help our students, for instance, we help our students get their intern licenses, because students in pharmacy have to have a student license in order to be on rotation in a licensed pharmacy. And those require some extra steps. So we work with the students, we work with the international office to make sure that everything is done in a timely fashion with minimal stress for the students. So we plan for that. Generally speaking, our international students are very successful on rotation and in the program. And a lot of our students wind up getting sponsored by employees if they wish to remain here and are offered positions in the US. So that's a great opportunity. Some of our international students who graduate choose to go on and get an additional degree. Others get involved in postgraduate education. We have residencies set up for international students and some fellowships. So there's lots of opportunity for all of our students, and our international students are an important segment of our student population, and we certainly work very closely with them and enjoy having them here on campus.
Thank you. And Jasmine, you yourself are an international student. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your story, your path. Could you give us an introduction of yourself and what you've done here at MCPHS, but also I think it'll be important to tell us what you're going to do afterward, because I think you have some great news to share.
So I am a Canadian student, so I am from Canada. One of the things that I think the school does a really good job at as far as helping us integrate into our rotations is they provide international students with the support that they need while you are in the United States. For example, what that means is you actually get an international advisor. This is someone who helps you with all the visa stuff and everything that we worry about when we think about how am I going to study in the States? How am I going to work in the States? So you actually have someone who you can go and ask all those questions to. And having that person in itself is it helps you let go of that load, and it helps you focus on your education. And so that I think is very important. And alongside that, you get an orientation on how, like, where to find things in the United States or which kind of people to speak to. And in the state of Massachusetts, they have a very, very particular accent or slang. And I remember during my international rotation, our orientation, they actually taught us about some of the words that are used so that us coming in as international students, we understood that slogan, that language, and we didn't find, like, we were able to understand what they were saying. So that was great. And it's so I'm in my final year of my PharmD program. And so it does say third year. So at the Worcester campus that I'm at, they have the accelerated program. And so what this means is that you complete a traditional doctor of pharmacy degree in 3 years instead of the 4. And so what this means is I don't get my summers off, which I don't mind, because I was always the type of person to complete my school during, like, take extra classes during the summer to save me time. But you still get a little bit of time in between to enjoy the city and hang out with your family and things like that. And so I had my introductory rotations at Mass Eye and Ear, which is a specialty infirmary of Mass General Brigham. Many people have heard of Mass General. You go on any TV show, you watch any movie that's based out of the States, you will hear about Mass General. And so I love to proudly say that I was at the specialty hospital, which is one of the top 10 in the world, and number 4 for eye care in the United States. And I know I said I'm in pharmacy, but it is the specialty hospital for eye care. And so as a pharmacist, I got to work in the pharmacy and provide a lot of patients with eye medications. And I got to learn a lot more and work closely with ophthalmology, which is where our IPE training really kicks in. It's where you get that, you already have your opportunity to communicate with optometrists. So when I was there at that clinic, I was able to understand what they bring to the table. I was able to understand what they do and help provide my services as well. And then we have, I did my other introductory rotation with Keys Drug, which is my preceptor is actually an MCPHS alumni. And so I got to work with him. I got to work with his dad, who was also an MCPHS alumni. And then I spent my advanced rotations working with his brother and his brother's son, who also an MCPHS alumni. So the reason why I want to point that out is that the MCPHS is the second oldest pharmacy school in the country. And what this means is MCPHS as a title has been around for a very long time. You are very likely to run into a lot of students and a lot of professionals who've graduated from our school, which allows you to network so much more. And we like helping who we know. And so for me, I was able to network and get so many experiences working with these people. And then I had the opportunity at the pharmacy outreach, which I spoke on. And I'm currently completing my internal medicine rotation at the Milford Regional Center. And I know Dr. DiFrancesco, he spoke earlier on our technology. And so one of the things that we do is we are exposed to technology throughout our entire program. I'll give you an example of what happened today. It was my first day in the hospital, and I got to sit down, and my professor logged into into the system, and he told me to go through the program and just learn a little about the program, know where to find patient profiles and everything. It didn't take me longer than 2 minutes to find the system because it was very similar to what we used during school. Within 5 minutes of opening up that program, I was able to identify a drug interaction, which I then shared with my preceptor, which he then shared during rounds. And we were able to prevent an aspirin allergy that could have caused a patient harm. And he was very impressed that I was able to find this information so quick. And he repeatedly told everyone, my student has a sharp eye. And I thank that to MCPHS integrating these different programs and letting us use all of that. So that definitely does play a role in your rotations when you're out there. And I guess post-grad opportunities. So you have the opportunity to do residencies, fellowships, and community. Now, I worked at Mass Eye and Ear, and that gave me an insight to the hospital as well as my experience at the UMass during my rotations. And my preceptors actually thought that I would be wonderful for residency and said that if I needed any help with my applications or any of that, that they would be delighted to help. I actually had someone recently reach out to me on LinkedIn asking if I had applied for residencies. However, I started as a community person and I'm ending as a community pharmacist as well. So I did not say yes to that, but it was great to know that I had a network of people who were willing to help me, and I was able to build that network during my rotations. And so, Ida, you said that I had some news to share. I did recently accept a position as a community pharmacist in New Hampshire. And I still have some time before I graduate, but this is important to note because I was able to get this opportunity through a set of interviews that were made available to students by our MCPHS case. This is our career services program, which actually brought in a lot of pharmacies and gave them the opportunity to interview students, knowing that we will be entering the workforce and will be looking for jobs. And so I completed a bunch of interviews earlier this year, and during that time, I did these at school, and I was able to collect some offers and make a decision on what I'm going to be doing even before finishing my rotations and graduating. And so that's kind of where I am now from where I've started.
Congratulations, that's phenomenal. Very impressive. And Jasmine, if we could ask you, if you could help these students listening to us who are in the process of making this very difficult decision of which program is the right fit, what should they look out for in the programs they are considering, particularly in the topic we're talking about today, to make sure that they will get the most out of their rotations, which, as we've seen with you, have such an impact on their future?
Well, I think one thing is that the program is definitely very important. It is very important for you to make sure that you pick a program that fits your needs, and that includes making sure that they have a support system where they're going to provide the students that. And another thing is location. Location is very important, and a lot of my family members and friends ask me why I didn't study in Canada. Canada has wonderful schools as well, but I always wanted to come to Boston. And why? Boston is the hub of innovation in science and medicine. You hear about MIT, Harvard, that picture you showed earlier of MCPHS nestled amongst all these amazing hospitals. On my way home from the Milford Regional Center, I took this back road through these small towns, and I came across so many ambulatory clinics for UMass or Mass Gen. And just knowing that all these opportunities are available, it's a great feeling because you want to be able to maximize on that. And that's something that not every state or city or country can provide you. And to be in the middle of a place where it's all there and you can go to any corner is kind of really great. And so for me, my opportunities and what you can see on this list, they helped me build a network. And pharmacy is a small world. I have heard that from multiple pharmacists. And then again, every healthcare professional will probably tell you that their field is a small world. And it's really nice to have it all nestled in one area because it helps you make your network that much bigger and it helps you connect with so many people. And so while you're looking for a program, you also really want to make sure that it's a location where you can have multiple opportunities, because there's students everywhere and students everywhere are fighting for opportunities, and there's a lot of competition. If there's only one hospital, one amazing hospital in your area, and you want to do a rotation there, but you have 100 classmates plus other competing schools, how are the odds looking? Are they in your favor? So that's kind of what I would say is, when you're looking, yes, look at the program, but also look at the location, because that is a life changer as well.
That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. So students, you prospective students who are watching this, as you take time to think about and look at different programs, when you're choosing the clinical program, don't minimize the importance of rotations. I think that Jasmine's example is a fantastic way of understanding how your future career is going to build on these rotations. These rotations are going to build on the preparation you have and on the institution that you choose. Here is a summary on this slide of key questions that we've collected for you that you should be asking of every program. These questions cover rotation quality and variety, networking opportunities, the support system, and the preclinical preparation that you would want to make sure to look at and understand, so that you can be the best possible professional version of you that you can be during your rotations. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I want to give a sincere thanks to our panelists. The information you shared was invaluable, and I think that we've all learned a lot. So thank you very much. So I want to wish everyone a good day. Yes, go, Paul, go ahead. You unmuted.
I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate the chance to talk to potential students, because I think for people like Dr. Waldorf and our faculty members, that's what we live for, is students. That's what we committed at. We've both been in practice, taking care of patients, and now in this part of our career, we're taking care of students, and that's what we love to do.
Well, thank you, and we'll see you soon in Boston or Worcester or Manchester. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Thank you.